We need a functioning Dáil with a functioning and properly resourced committee system. One of the principal defects in how the Dáil functions is that there is no clear line between the executive and the Dáil itself. Basically, the government or executive has commandeered the function of the legislature. I just don't refer to this in administration. It has become custom and practice for the Dáil to be subservient to the timetable and the wishes of the government, which is the reverse of how it was intended to operate. The consequences is that between the executive and the permanent government, the civil servants, they are controlling everything. A good example is the timetable. What we're seeing is the excessive use of guillotines, late publication of bills, very brief time spans for tabling amendments, which are almost never taken by the government. And really this is an abusive process. How we do our budgets is a private matter between government and the civil service. We are promised that this would change. However, so far we've seen little evidence of this. If anything, it has become more centralised. The purpose of separating the two functions is to ensure that there is no unchecked power. The intention was that they exist and operate separately as standalone entities, but work in cooperation. Basically, we have a permanent government, which is the civil service. We then have a dynamic government which involves politics, which is there at the will of the people. And on occasions, it's impossible to tell which is which. The role of political parties and the whip system is an issue. Article 40 of our Constitution sets out the rights that citizens may enjoy in a republic, including the right to form associations and unions. The Constitution makes no reference whatsoever to political parties, but is implied in the right to form associations. In a political sense, this has become to mean political parties, with only one model, it would seem, seen as valid, and is unfortunately designed and more or less reinforced to protect the traditional system. The excessive control by political parties in power is a misuse of power, and while I accept governments must govern, and that requires a majority, at least on economic matters, however, the monopoly of wisdom that was cautioned against on the first day of the current Dáil has become a reality. It impacts not just on the opposition, and perhaps impacts less on the opposition, but it limits input from the ranks of the government's own backbenches. The dire consequence for losing the whip, for example, excludes the deputy from speaking rights, membership of committees, access to systems funded by the taxpayer on the basis of the number of TDs that the party has had at election time. It's wrong. The person who is elected under the banner of a political party ceases, if they accept that whip system, to have independent thought of action, and I believe discredits politics. I'm going over time. I'll wrap up as quickly as I can. Dáil reforms to date have been superficial. They've been about box ticking. And really we need to address the fundamental issue, and the fundamental question is the relationship between the Dáil and the executive and the correct checks and balances. I said I'd return to the issue of clientelism. It seems that flourishes when citizens cannot easily navigate the various state institutions to access their entitlements. It fosters a type of middleman or middlewoman in the political system, where the focus is all about fixing the individual citizen's problem rather than fixing the system. And that must change. We almost regard government also as an external or other. We require a good middleman to interface with that power on our behalf. When we go into the polling booth, are we judging people on the basis of who can best govern us? Or are we thinking about who has the best skills as an intermediary between me and the nameless power that I have no influence over? If we are to change the political culture to focus on fixing the system rather than an individual's problem, I believe it would lead to a clash of ideas where real choices would emerge and politics becomes policy rather than personality driven. I just want to refer to one thing. Look, we can rob ideas from other locations. I was very impressed with a Norwegian system of e-government that produced huge savings, like, for example, 17% less hours were spent on administration with an investment. It did take an investment. But over 10 years, they've saved the equivalent of $7 billion US dollars on a system that has digitised and has replaced a lot of the traditional ways of doing things. Let's start looking at things that are good ideas elsewhere, and I think that is a good example. But it has to be done in a way that people can engage with easily. Just to sum up then, Republican ideals require us to put the citizen at the centre, to design our systems in a way that inspires, facilitates and engages citizens in a way that makes the best use of our collective talents. I've set out, I hope, what is a snapshot of what I think some of the reform initiatives should be. We will soon commemorate the 100th anniversary of the Easter Rising and the foundation of our state. That was a revolutionary time. We are now in a different but revolutionary time. It is time for fundamental reform. We need to stop the patchwork and start rebuilding a better and more inclusive future. Thank you.